Hi, I'm Jonathan Amy. We're here today again with Clay Starling. He's going to be talking about selecting, organizing, and describing skills. Clay, please take it away.
Thank you, Jonathan. So welcome to the presentation on selecting, organizing, and describing skills. Probably the first thing to remember is everything is a skills, from motor skills to social skills to critical thinking skills. So from picking up a pencil to solving a complex problem, everything is a skill. I like to start with an educational mission statement. This is one I've worked on for a number of years and pretty happy with, to create citizens who are loving and competent in completing the tasks of daily living. I'd like to organize kind of the skill areas in a kind of pyramid. So we start with the foundation skills of developmental, basic communication, and higher order. So those are foundational to the daily living skills of home and community and occupational, and those lead to the mastery of those leads to the accomplishment of the educational mission. So once we have identified the skill areas, and we want to look at the subparts and specific skills. So here's an example in the prose writing area. Prose writing has 9 subparts, and we'll kind of zero in on the punctuation one. This is a format that I've used for a number of years called a skill ladder. It has 3 different levels. On the left is an inventory level, which bigger chunks. In the middle, intermediate levels, smaller chunks, and then the item level, very specific skills. So for example, at the bottom here are all end marks, but the intermediate level is just periods, and then an item level of just periods at the end of a sentence. So that's an example of kind of making sure we get our materials kind of selected and organized in terms of what skills we might want to teach a student. So then we want to make sure we precisely describe the skills, also known as pinpointing. These are 3 helpful questions that I've used for a while that I find helpful. How do you know? What do you mean? What is the student doing? So for instance, if I said, I'd like Brianna to improve her speaking skills. So then I might say, well, what do you mean by speaking skills? And what will Brianna doing when she's improved her speaking skills? Then I might say, well, I'd like her to reduce the number of grammatical errors and increase the number of new words she uses. Okay, now I have some pretty specific skills to focus on. Another important aspect when considering selecting and describing skills is to distinguish between goals, objectives, and interventions. So here's an example in the area of word pronunciation. So if our focus here is on the objectives, we have different ones from level 1 to 12, then all these things on the right are interventions. And then we might also specify a overall goal. But there's frequently a confusion in standards and objectives you see written where these things are confused. So it's important to get focused on what your outcome objective is and not confuse them with goal and intervention statements. So another important aspect of describing skills is the ability to look at both inner and outer performance. So here's a listing of both of thoughts, feelings, and urges. You can come back and look at that in a little more detail, but gives you some examples of both things to increase and decrease in the area of inner behavior. We usually have performance pairs when we're pinpointing skills. Here's some examples in the academic area, personal and social area. So it's important to keep track of both increase and decrease targets. And sometimes we may actually want to look at trios or quartets, and here's some examples. So we might have correct, incorrect skips, or happy, sad, neutral feelings, urges to eat, choose gum, bite of food, nice thoughts, nice comments, unkind thoughts, unkind comments. So some examples of kind of trio or quartet pinpoints. It's important in specifying skills to use channel language. Here's a matrix that was originally developed by Eric Houghton in the early 80s. On the left, you see the sensory input areas, and then across the top are the actions the student would actually perform. So we're going to actually do a little exercise here. So this is where you'll need your paper and pencil. So Pierre will spell 50 science words from 8th grade science curriculum with 90% accuracy. So that's an objective that some people might look at and think was fairly good objective, but there's two major problems with it. One, exactly what we mean by spelling, and the fact that we're using a 90% accuracy criteria, which should be a count over time, which we discussed in a previous Heart the Chart video regarding mastery. So if you don't have a paper and pencil, you might pause the tape now and get that, but here we'll proceed with the activity here. So first thing I'd like you to do is write this sentence in red. So please begin. Okay, thank you. So that's an example of C's word writes letter word. It's really kind of a copying activity, but it's always kind of amazing how often kids will copy something for a chalkboard where they're actually copying it, but they'll actually misspell some words. So it's an example of something that can fall under the area of spelling. Another example is here a word says the letters. So I'm going to give you a word and I'd like you to say the letters. The word is Europe. Okay, so that's a different example of a spelling activity. Now, here's another one. I'll say a word and I'd like you to actually write the letters this time. The word is Africa. So again, now a third different kind of activity or skill under this heading of spelling. Now I'd like you to think of a word, let's say your favorite food, and say the letters. Okay, please begin. Thank you. Now, I'd like you to think of a word, let's say a favorite color, and write the letters. Okay, please begin. Thank you. Okay, so now we've actually seen 5 different skills under this broad category of spelling. So this is an example of making sure that we're really precise in defining the skill that we want the student to learn. Interestingly enough, different students do better on these different kind of skills, so it's important to distinguish them. And if you want them to be competent in all of them, then of course we're going to practice and measure all 5 of these areas. So then besides clarifying the word spelling, then we want to make sure that we actually change this mastery criteria to a count over time mastery criteria. So those would be adjustments to that objective that some people might think was a pretty good one. This is a format I've used for a number of years. We call it the Writing Precise Performance Objective Sheet. I shorten it with WPPO. So we start with the learner's name here, a skill area and subpart here, a skill description, which includes the sense and action aspect from the matrix, and then the prompt or stimulus, and then the actual count unit that you're going to count. And then include the mastery criterion, and then what measurement conditions exist. Here's an explanation of each of those columns that you can come back to and look at in more detail at another time. So let's give you a couple examples. So here's one in the area of reading, and the subpart is oral. C's passage says word, skill description, mastery criterion, 250 to 150 correct words per minute with only inconsistent error, and then level 5 reader in the 7th grade classroom. So that's kind of an example of using the WPPO sheet in an academic area. In the social area, we might focus on comments. Thinks nice comment, says nice comment. Mastery criteria, 10 nice comments and no unkind comments per class, and it's in the science class. So that kind of gives you an example of kind of using that format to precisely define some skills. So to summarize, you should agree on an educational mission statement to balance all the skills we're interested in teaching. Identify skill areas, subparts, and specific skills. Consider both inner and outer behavior. Usually include an increase and decrease pair, and include in precise descriptions, channel language, frequency-based mastery criteria, and specify measurement conditions. So that's a pretty quick overview of selecting, organizing, and describing skills. Thanks for watching. If you have any questions, you can contact me at this email.
Clay, once again, a terrific presentation. I learned quite a bit about how to organize these skills. Thank you again.
You're welcome. Thank you.